Hello, BookTube. Well, as I mentioned, this has been a sad morning for me uh, because it was filled with the news of the death of Larry Kramer. And it's going to be a sad afternoon and a sad rest of the week as I watch with wincing as the literary world on Twitter and in the newspapers, and then eventually down the line in a week or two in the literary journals, tries to do the pious thing by him, tries to do the usual thing. You know, the thing I'm talking about, you haul on somebody to write 1,000 words about what Larry Kramer meant to me, or, what he was like, that sort of thing. And appreciation is the word for what they do. And he was a tough person to appreciate. And he made it so intentionally. He was a fiercely complicated individual. And that is going to provoke the worst, I predict, in those pieces. I'll take you through them when I get them in the literary journals that I get in the mail, but it won't be pleasant, I don't think. It'll be full of hypocrisies and stupid euphemisms, both of which he hated. But as I mentioned in another video, I am going to just blatantly use talking to you to get over the sadness of this. On a non-personal level, this was a person who lived by his own lights, never abandoned or backed away from the things he thought were important, and made a real mark on his time. Not just on society, but also on literature. And so, on a non-personal level, there's a lot to celebrate rather than mourn. This is not a lost opportunity. This is not a Larry Kramer cut off in his prime with most of his potential unrealized, as were so many of the young writers that he knew. So, I'm just going to process it, but in the meantime, I'm just going to talk to you. That always cheers me up. That always puts a smile on my face. Of course, getting a ton of mail, including gifts from me, those arrived at just the right time. The gifts that I got in the mail today arrived at just the right time. But today is also Wednesday, and that was traditionally the day that I did Comic Book Day. That has been blown to the winds by the pandemic and by comic book shops being declared non-essential, and then by the comic book distributor, Diamond Distributing, going basically belly up for a long time, and now trying to claw their way back to being the sole distributor of superhero comics in the American world. And that, all of that, plus the fact that comic book companies have tried to move around being inessential, and they've tried to move around Diamond distributors, all of that is changing the landscape. So who knows what Wednesdays will probably not be New Comic Book Day. In the near future, that will probably be either some other day or a New Comic Book Day, singular, won't make any sense. And if that happens, then I will rethink this whole Comic Book Day thing. I will do it maybe every day, or maybe once a week, on any day that I pick, or whatever. But in the meantime, on Wednesdays I talk about comics, and since I don't have new comics to talk about, on Wednesdays I've been taking those of you who are interested in comic books through my old comics. And that's what we're doing today. We're going to go through just a few more of my old issues. So I have a number of long white cardboard long boxes where comic book fans traditionally put their comics. It's a very neat format because the comics can stand upright so that you can just thumb your way through the tops and to see what you have. The correct way to do your cardboard long boxes is to have all of your individual comic books bagged and boarded. So you slip the comic into a mylar sheath with a cardboard backing behind it so that you're not destroying it when you're doing that finger-tipping and when you're pulling things out. I don't care about these things enough to do that, so I have not done that, and as a result, comics that I've had for 50 years or 60 years or 70 years are in rough shape. But I've enjoyed them all, very much so. And we'll see what we have today. I just grabbed, we're working our way through a new long box, so I just grabbed a handful of stuff at random. Okay, and this first one is old. This is from 1971. Writing by Jerry Conway and art by Gene Colan. This is Daredevil number 76. Stan Lee was still taking a rather heavy hand in this. The only reason that I got it was for Gene Colan's artwork, which is, it's inked by Tom Palmer, and Tom Palmer civilizes Colan to an extent. But also, Cullen was doing something in these issues that he chose not to do in a little bit later work. He was doing very distinct, clear-cut action and straightforward storyboarding in these, in a way that he didn't tend to do in later work. He did that on his run on Daredevil, helped by Tom Palmer. And as a result, his run on Daredevil has a kind of appeal for me, although the character himself, usually not. Daredevil's a perfect example of a character that I don't really care about, but who regularly attracts great artists and writers who have long and emblematic runs on that character, so that I am drawn into the character even though I'm not particularly a fan. Gene Colan's run with Jared Conway on this book, I'm a fan of Gene Colan's art, so that makes it of interest. But a quintessential case in point for Daredevil would be Frank Miller. His run on Daredevil is widely revered as a classic of the character, and I agree with that. I think it's fantastic. I have the same problem with Batman. Every once in a while, a writer or an artist or a writer-artist team will go on to Batman for a bit and make it unmissable, and then I have to read it, even though Batman and Daredevil don't have superpowers. They aren't from Krypton. But anyway, what is this? Oh my. Oh, goodness. All right, this next one is from 1967. Oh, God, this isn't going to last very long. This is Fantasy Masterpieces. It's just a reprint edition. This one reprints old horror pulp stuff, and an adventure of the All Winners squad, which was the World War II era Marvel superheroes, or timely superheroes, after the war, but before the modern era, before the Fantastic Four and before the X-Men and all that, before Stan Lee reinvented Timely as Marvel's superhero line. And so you have all of these characters. You have the Invaders, the ones we've seen in Roy Thomas's later book, The Invaders, Captain America and his teenage sidekick Bucky, the Human Torch and his teenage sidekick Toro, Prince Namor the Submariner, and then in the All Winners squad, they are joined by the Whizzer, a man who can run super fast, and Miss America, who we've seen on this channel before, the first female superhero who can fly. But in the comics, in her original comics, she's actually also super powered. And in the Invaders and in most issues of the All Winners squad, most writers have tended to forget that, or quietly dismiss it, so that she's not upstaging the men. It's a little bit annoying, but it's still fun. It's still fun to do. It's still fun to read. Okay, then we have Thor. This is Thor number 411. Wow, this is still $1. Nothing can stop the Juggernaut. This is Ron Friend's artwork, I believe. Yes, it's Ron Friend's artwork, but it's inked by Joe Sinnott, who I've mentioned on this channel before as a fantastic inker. Just fantastically, he fantastically smooths things out and brings out the best in most of his of the artists that he inks. And the bulk of this issue is just a knockdown, drag-out fight between Thor and the X-Men villain, the Juggernaut, who is, according to the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, Deluxe Edition, Thor and the Juggernaut are equally strong. They're well over Class 100 strength, meaning that they can lift well over 100 tons. And so it's a natural thing. Thor fans always want Thor to square off against these kind of characters, whether it's Juggernaut or the Hulk or anything like that. And this issue does a fantastic job of that. This issue is most notable because at the very end, when it looks like Juggernaut has beaten Thor, he is interrupted by a new group of superheroes called the New Warriors in their very first appearance. And they take on, the story goes off from here into the next issue, where they try to fight the Juggernaut, and Thor revives and fights him again. Terrific stuff. I love Ron Francis' artwork. Absolutely love it. It's an extra treat when he's inked by Joe Sinnott, but he's good for any kind of inker. Okay. All right. This is from 1977. We have artwork here that is not worth mentioning. Yong Montano is the artist, but the writer is Elliot S. Magan, who was a long-time, really good, entertaining writer on Superman. This is as far away from Superman as you can get. This is Marvel's old classic Illustrated, and this is their version of the Iliad. And it is, it's pretty bad. it's pretty bad. I'll give you one one particular panel when Achilles learns that Hector has killed Patroclus. He lets out a huge cry from the walls of the Greek encampment. So terrible, so embarrassing. I got it back in the 1970s just because I've never had an illustrated Iliad before, and I thought it would be interesting. Okay, great. All right, this had it all. This next one had it all. This is... it had artwork that was going to draw me in anyway, but it also had intellectual properties, as we now call them. This is from the 1990s, I believe. 1992. This was a two-part thing done by Valiant and Dark Horse, a team-up between the Predator from the Predator movies and Magnus the Robot Fighter, who lives in a far future era where he is a human who can fight and beat the robots that are ubiquitous in his far future. And I learned that this was going to be drawn by Lee Weeks, who's incredible. He's artwork is just amazing. Follow him anywhere. He still does artwork, and I still will. He is enough for me to buy pretty much anything. But also the fringe benefit when I finally got these on the newsstands was that the covers are by Barry Windsor-Smith, who's another artist that I absolutely love. That was just icing on the cake. This is a terrific two-part story. Just terrific. And again, as I've mentioned in these comic book videos before, I had no way of knowing if this would ever be collected. This is a collaboration between two companies, both of which have had rough legal and financial spats since then. And I don't know that Valiant is still in existence. Does Valiant Comics still come out? One way or another, negotiating the idea of making this into a trade paperback is probably a nightmare. Same thing with negotiating a trade paperback of Nexus teaming up with Magnus Robot Hunter. I'd love a collected of all of that, but I don't know that such a thing's been made. Okay, then we go back to Valiant. This is one of their more boring titles, boringly written and boringly drawn, of a title called Eternal Warrior. And the only reason I got this issue is because the idea here was that the Eternal Warrior is one of three immortal brothers who have just lived throughout all of time. And another one is a character named Armstrong, who was in another Valiant comic book called Archer and Armstrong that I just loved, also drawn by the aforementioned Barry Windsor-Smith. This is drawn by, I don't even know, John Dixon, and it's not good. It's boring. And I'm pretty sure I got this issue back in the 1990s. Is that right? I don't know when this was. 1992. I'm pretty sure I got this just because of Armstrong, just because he was guest starring in it, but it was uneventful. I shouldn't have kept it. Okay, then we have some X-Men issues. One that we've seen before, X-Men Unlimited #1, an oversized thing that has a big story in it with artwork by Chris Bacallo and writing by Scott Lobdell, and this is just fantastic. The big story in this first issue was a bravura way to start, and then just an issue of the Uncanny X-Men, number 287. Which I got. This is again Scott Lobdell, but I got it because the artwork is by John Romita Jr., who also did the cover. And John Romita Jr. is a fantastic comic book artist. Always has been, always will be. He has some detractors. He no sooner gets a gig on a major high-profile thing than you'll have people, fanboys, neckbeards, crawl out of the woodwork and say, he was good about 35 years ago. Hasn't been good since then. I always want to say to them, okay, you want to turn in better artwork? You want to show me anyone turning in better artwork? But he is another example, like Lee Weeks and a bunch of other artists, where if he's on a title, I will get it. Which has led me to get a whole bunch of titles and comics characters that I'm not interested in the slightest. But what are you going to do? Okay, this is a perfect example. This is, we've mentioned this before, this is Malibu Comics. And this is from the 1990s. And this is Rune. And it is drawn, written, created, conceived, executed by Barry Windsor-Smith, who does a fantastic job. His artwork is just incredible, just amazing. And it's about an immortal, imperious, totally evil cosmic space vampire named Rune, who is a villain. He's not a hero. He's not redeemed in the course of this book. All he wants to do is kill and destroy things. And Uh, okay, it's Barry Windsor-Smith. I'm not going to belabor the point. I will say all that Rune likes to do is kill and destroy things, and very often, the things look like that. We need not stress the point. Yes, indeed. The scene hardly needs dialogue. uh, this is terrific fun. Again, I don't know if Rune has ever been collected. I really enjoyed it, even though it didn't seem to me to make any sense. It seemed to me a perfect example of Barry Windsor-Smith writing out of his tuchus, which he did on a couple of occasions for a couple of different products, but his artwork got more and more operatic as it went along, so I didn't mind. Okay, all right, well, this is definitely a theme. This is Marvel Premiere, which a long time ago in the 1980s, I think this is, 1976, was a kind of comic, we've mentioned it before, where there's no ongoing character. Instead, it's a sort of a showcase title where one or two shot characters are put in, they have their day in the sun, they're burned off the inventory, and then they go out onto the market. And if they happen to be popular, well, they might get a book of their own. Marvel, at the time, very much listened to its fans and its sales figures. So if they did premiered something in Marvel Premiere and fans liked it, they would consider giving it a bi-monthly. And then if the bi-monthly did well, they'd consider giving it a monthly. And this is Marvel Premiere number 32, and I got it solely for the artist. This is Monarch Starstalker. I don't think anything was ever done with this character after this. It's just a science fiction story. That's all it is. It's just a science fiction story, not even a superhero story. It's a science fiction story starring this character, Monarch Starstalker. And the only reason I got it is because the artwork is by Howard Chaykin. I think the writing might be by Howard Chaykin as well, if I remember correctly. Yes, this whole thing is by Howard Chaykin, and he's great. He's a great comic artist, great comic writer. Not the taste of everybody, but I love him, and that's the only reason I got it. And once again, where will I ever see Monarch Starstalker? Maybe in a collected Howard Chaykin, but this was Marvel Comics. Marvel might, even now, 50 years later, they might assert the rights to Monarch Starstalker. So if Chaykin wanted to do a big collected volume that shows his one-off and two-off works from many different publishers, Marvel might not let him do this. They might not let him include this. So I kept it. I've kept it all this time. And occasionally I reread it, because I think it'd be fun. It'd be fun to read other adventures in the world of Monarch Starstalker. Maybe not even starring this character, just other adventures. But again, I haven't done the research or kept up, so I don't know if Chaykin has ever revisited this character. Okay. All right. Then we have, this is a terrific issue. The artwork is by Pasquale Ferry. And this is just an issue of Superman in Action Comics that is, the only reason I got this is because the artwork is so incredible. Just so amazing that I just got it, and I periodically reread it because it is fantastic. It is just a fantastic issue, just a fantastic all-around great Superman story. So, and Superman is one of my favorite comic book characters. Superboy, not any of the current Superboys, but the adventures of Clark Kent when he was a costumed teenager in the Midwest, is my all-time favorite DC character. But Superman is a close second. I will take it. Okay, speaking of which, we go back to 1973. This is the aforementioned Elliot Maggin. This is him writing Superman. And this is Superman number 263 with a Neil Adams cover that is partly a photographic background. See, that was a thing that comic book writers or artists sometimes experimented with. Stan Lee did it in the interiors of the Fantastic Four, and Neil Adams did it here on this cover where you have a real-world background with a cartoon over it. But the interior artwork is by Kurt Swan. Who's amazing. He's one of my favorite Superman artists. And Elliot Maggin always was ready with a great plot for Superman, for whatever, with a great twist at the end. He used to say that the S, Elliot S. Maggin, that the S was for surprise. Okay, then we have a few more issues of, let's see here, 207, 210, 211, and 212. A few more issues of a run of Thor that I do not need. I do not need these anymore. I have these now in hardcover and in an epic trade paperback. So the only reason that I would ever want to keep these things would be because age has rendered the colors prettier. than anything that you could do in a current format. But that's a small reason to keep these things and lug them from box to box and house to house and whatnot. I don't need them anymore. Back in the 70s when these things came out, I was eagerly buying them. This run of Thor was one of my favorites. Not these particular issues, but this whole era of Thor, the John Buscema era of Thor, was one of my favorites. I bought these. I bought all the other stuff that Marvel and DC were doing so well. It was wonderful. 25 cents got you epic Roy Thomas Conan adventure. It got you epic stuff in the Avengers and the Justice League and Superman and Thor, and I bought it all. That was the second era that really made me fall in love with comic books was then. But back in that era, I never dreamt that the day would come when all of these things would be available in book form. There's no reason to have these issues anymore and have them flaking apart and have to go and hunt for them if I can have just a book on a shelf. So, then I mentioned Conan from Marvel Comics. This was one of those. This is an annual, Conan the Barbarian annual number 4. No idea why I kept this particular one, except that I really liked the huge size of it. The story just goes on and on and on. I love the John Buscema artwork. I think this is Ernie Chan artwork, or inking. It was inked by Ernie Chan, who tends to bring out. I don't know if you can, probably can't tell, but Chan tends to bring out little. He does little lines, little marks of definition and motion that aren't necessarily there in Buscema's artwork. So that, I mean, you can appreciate it. You can appreciate an artist like him done by an inker like Ernie Chan, but they are opposing art styles. So part of the fun is in the see, look at the tiny little brush strokes everywhere on there. Part of the fun of Ernie Chan and Ernie Chua inking someone like John Buscema is that they don't go together well. So you get the contrast comes out. I don't know why I kept this particular annual. I didn't keep a lot of individual issues of Conan the Barbarian, and I need not have, because these things also have been collected in massive hardcover omnibus editions that will, over time, be broken up into epic collections, trade paperbacks in full color. So I don't need these old issues anymore. But something like this is from Marvel Comics, but this was just a one-off. And so if I didn't keep this, I would never find it anywhere else. This was Legion of Monsters, number 1. And this is Werewolf by Night. The author is Mike Carey, and the artist is Greg Lang. As those of you who know comic book art will know right away that the artist is Greg Lang, because he has a tendency to trace, a very strong tendency to trace. He is a source of contention among comic book art aficionados, because nobody knows whether to like this kind of work or not. Often, I mean, I myself think that it's incredibly lazy, although I think that Greg Land can show flashes of compositional competence. But if you're tracing something else, a Sports Illustrated picture, the artwork of another artist, I don't know. That seems to me to be sort of defeating the purpose. But Werewolf by Night was one of the dorkier Marvel characters and a kind of quirky favorite of mine, so I got this. And I can certainly put up with Greg Land's artwork. I don't condemn it in any way. All right. This next one is a Justice League, written by Joe Kelly, with art by Duncan Rollo, who was a guest artist. And I think that's why I got this, because I looked at the artwork in the store and really liked it. I'm pretty sure that's why I kept it. This is Justice League JLA number 80, Trouble in the Heartland, with Superman facing off against a DEA agent. And the artwork is very cartoony. There is Batman's butler Alfred taking Wonder Woman's stole. This was during a brief period when Wonder Woman and Batman were flirting with the idea of being a romantic couple. And this is the team roster, several of whom you will not recognize, because this was a weird period in the team where the membership was downright strange. It was downright strange. There was a supervillain, first of all, Major Disaster, and a whole bunch of other characters that had virtually no back history, and that was kind of strange to do. And as a result, I sort of fell away from Justice League, which is why I didn't have any of the issues leading up to this. I grabbed this because of that artwork. Okay, and then we finish up with another super team. This is Marvel's signature super team. This is from the 1970s, I believe. Yes, 1974. Good Lord. And it's written by Roy Thomas, and it's drawn by Rich Buckler, who was an artist a lot like Ron Frenz. He could go through long periods where he was simply doing an extended homage to some other comic book artist, whether it was Jack Kirby or Neil Adams or whatever. And that used to be a thing in Marvel art, in comic book art, and I don't think it happens anymore. Rich Buckler could be very, very exacting about it. So right down to again, mimicking explicit panels from older Jack Kirby work. And he does that in this. This is Giant Size Avengers #1, with an absolutely gorgeous John Romita Sr. cover. That is just beautiful. Just beautiful. Never mind that Thor's hammer would be taking Captain America's head off. It's still just beautiful. That is just... but Rich Buckler does the artwork on the inside, and this is a story of the aftermath of World War II. What happened to the aforementioned All Winners squad. And it turns out in this issue that the Wizard and Miss America get married. And they have a child, but before they have a child, they work in a nuclear hazardous position, and that means their child is going to be an irradiated monster. And the storyline here of the child of the Wizard and Miss America has been adapted and changed from this issue. This issue, Roy Thomas was the historian of Marvel Comics, so naturally he was going to revive the All Winners squad and ground this whole story in the past. And it's a really good job. I love this Giant Size. This is effectively an annual, and I love it. But I very much like the work that has been done since on the whole character, the whole storyline of who exactly were the children of Miss America and the Wizard, and the provenance, the specific provenance of the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. That story was improved by John Byrne later on, so I'm not, and Chris Claremont later on. But so this issue is a bit of an anomaly, but I loved it anyway. so there you go. That was another tour through my back issues. Old stuff, new stuff, the usual mix. So we'll do this again on Friday and see what we find then. I'm still working my way through that one long box, so that'll be a while. But so I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll see you comic book fans again on Friday. Thank you, BookTube.